Hi Noteboard Gamers and welcome back to Noteboard Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video I'm going to be previewing a game which hits Kickstarter on the 4th of March, and this game has been quite a bit of a buzz for the last couple of years, you see, because the designers over at Kinson Key Games have been very open and transparent and showed everybody everything about the development process of this game. And what is the game? Well, as you can see from the box here, this wonderful artwork on this box, it is Galactic Cruise from Kinson Key Games, designed by Edward Taylor King, Colton Thompson and Dennis Northcott, with the artwork by the ubiquitous and the one and only Ian O'Toole. So what is Galactic Cruise? It is an action selection game. Think Vital Lacerda type games, and it really does wear its homage to Vital's games on its sleeve, where the CEO of Galactic Cruise, I think he's called Travis E. Perkins, is retiring, and you are going to vie to be the next CEO. Over a number of rounds, you're going to try and advertise for cruises, you're going to build developments, you're going to build shuttles and launch those shuttles into space where they will take people on this intergalactic journey, visiting planets where you can get upgrades and scoring new points. As I say, it is an action selection game. It's not worker placement, it's actions. It's an action selection game, and it is for 1 to 4 players. That's right, there is a solo mode that comes with it, and here are the cards for this solo AI, and it's obviously the solo that I'm going to be discussing today. I've played it solo maybe 5 times now, and I've had a really interesting and very good time playing Galactic Cruise. Now, as you can see from, and you'll see from when I show you the board as well, this is a prototype, so please bear that in mind. But the production quality on this prototype is excellent. We have dual layered player boards. We have screen printed wooden meeples. We have thick cardboard chits for things like the segments that you're going to build, the rockets, the action tiles on the board. It's a fantastic prototype. The rule book is utterly excellent as well. Now, I say prototype still, so there's some information still to be filled in here, and I'm sure there'll be a bit more development goes on into the rules, etc. But I jumped straight into the solo game, so I didn't learn it two-handed because I'd read through the rule book, then I read the solo rules that came separately. They will be included in the final version of the rule book, and I decided that it looks fairly straightforward enough for me to jump in and learn the solo directly, and that's exactly what I did. And let me tell you, my first game probably took, including setup, probably about an hour and 3/4, something like that. I reckon once you know, and that's obviously with rules referencing, etc. Once you get to know the game, you're probably going to be somewhere around about the 60 to 75 minute mark for gameplay, with a bit of setup and teardown at the back end of that, which I think is fantastic for a solo action selection game. So that's kind of a brief overview on what it is. Without much further ado, what I'll do is I'll drop you down to the table, I'll show you the board and all the components, I'll walk you through how the solo works. It's not going to be a rules teach per se, because there are other videos out there that are going to be doing full rules teachers on the entire on how the entire game plays. So it's not going to be a rules teach, it's going to be more of an overview on how the solo works, and just to give you an indication. But let me tell you, I will say off the bat that the solo is exceptionally easy to implement in this game. So things to remember: not a rules teach, it is a prototype, things are subject to change, and also I may get make the odd little error, and that's kind of standard for somebody doing videos. So without much further ado, we'll drop you down onto the board, show you what it looks like, explain the components, explain a round structure, how you score, and more importantly for soloers among you, how the solo AI works. The solo AI is called Rachel. Okay, let's drop down to the table. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got everything set up for the solo game. This is my player board here in green, and I apologise for the bit of glare coming off my lights. And over here we have Rachel, who's the AI, that's their player board. Here we have the AI cards, and I'll explain how they work in a bit. But let's just take you through kind of some of the core things that you'll see on here. So the player board is this wonderful dual layered board that you can see here. You can see these cogs. These are your developments. You're going to get to build them throughout the game. And where you will build them is going to be on the network, on the map, which is this area here, or up along those technologies on there. Why would you build one on the map? You see, On the board, you have these various buildings, and in these buildings, there are these tiles that you're going to place randomly, and there's an action on each of those tiles. When you place one of your workers, and you're going to start the game with 2 workers, on the board, you're going to place it, say, there, and you're allowed to carry out 2 actions. You can carry out either of these 2 actions, or if you have a development to a joining building, you can carry out an action from there. If you don't, and your opponent does, so let's say Rachel had got a development there, you can still carry out an action, but you're going to have to pay them to do that. So it's best to have your own developments there to try and reduce that amount of cost. So you're going to place that there, build your developments on there, place that, and then that allows you more spread of action. So strategically placing them around the board, your developments is really important. You can see that here we have some various areas that have stars on them. That means that if you place them there, you're going to get some reputation. This is this down here. Rachel will always go second, so she starts off with 1 reputation point, and you will go first, so you're going to start off with 0 reputation. Reputation scores you at the end of the game, but it also allows you to move back and claim any one resource depending on the number of times you pass over it. So if I was here, I could move my reputation right back and claim 2 money. That's these 2 here, a 1 and a 1. So I could move that back to there, and I could claim that money. Sorry, back to there and claim that money. So that's kind of how the developments work. Now, why do you want to build developments? As I mentioned, allows you to get more actions on the board. Also allows you actions to these game-changing technology tiles at the top of the board. Again, these are randomly put out, and in the solo game, you're going to keep the ones that you don't put out to one side, because they're going to dictate, first of all, where the non-player character developments go, but also they have those these NPC developments that you can see here, these yellow ones that I've got here for the NPCs, they're going to be put on after the first and second AGMs, the annual general meetings. I'll come on to those in a bit. So you place the developments here to get more actions, or you place them there to get access to those technologies. If you, again, have your cog on there, then you can use the technology for free. If you don't have your cog there, but somebody else has unlocked it, you can use it, but again, you have to pay for it. Also, the more developments that you build will score you points at the end of the game. So I've cleared this column, I will get 5 points, this one 15, and that one 30. But as you can see to the left of it here, we have some resources. We have food, we have oxygen, and we have fuel. You're going to need those when you're sending your shuttles out into space. At the moment, I can only have a maximum of 2 each. So the more developments I build, if I build that one, it allows me to get up to 3 foods. That's a really interesting mechanism that has a lot to do with not only on the board, but also in kind of the strength of your fuel, etc., your shuttle launches, etc. So that's that there. I mentioned you start the game with 2 workers, so I got my 2 workers here, and at either side, one there, and one on the left, and one on the right, there are executive workers as well, which will allow you to take this executive action. Again, this is randomly placed, so this one says that whenever I recall an executive, I get a recall bonus, a funding bonus as it's called, and I also get an additional one on there as well. And there are a number of those tiles that do that. So you will unlock these executive workers throughout the game. To unlock the one on the right, you have to pay 2 coins for every development that's still left in the food and the air column here, or the oxygen column. So at the moment, it would cost me 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 to unlock that. It's quite a lot of money to have. So you build the development to get access to that. The one on the left here, you can see, that's based on the amount of these grey tiles that you have down in the bottom, and these are your launch tiles. So when you start clearing those, you will pay 3 times the number of these grey tiles down here, these grey funding tiles down here that you still got left. So at the moment it would cost me 12 to get that one there. So unlocking your executives is probably not going to be something you do very early game. You could gamble on that, but chances are you're going to want to kind of build up to that. So these here, as I mentioned, these are your kind of funding goals. When you recall your workers, you get a funding goal, and you can choose from any of these on here, the brown ones on there, and that allows you kind of, when you recall them, to get a bonus. It starts off with 1 of each, basically. Then as you launch shuttles, you're going to flip that over. That's going to go into one of your upgrades here, and that funding bonus increases. So kind of launching shuttles gives you access to more and more points and resources, etc. Here we have the upgrade slots. There's 3 colour planets. There's orange, there's purple, there's green. And when you launch a shuttle, you will have one of these on your shuttle, and you can choose to then develop or upgrade one of these planets, which will give you the bonus that's associated underneath it there. There's also at the top end of the board, right in the top corner up there, some special funding bonuses that you get when you've completed a cruise and you bring your passengers back to Earth. So that's kind of the player board. The solo AI player board is exactly the same, except it's got some of its own kind of organisational goals, if you like, or solo goals, and I'll come on to them in a wee while. I mentioned these here. You're going to start the game with 5 money and 2 ads. Money obviously allows you to buy certain things. Things like, I don't know, maybe you can build upgrade tiles straight from the, segments, should I say, straight from the blueprint pile, and various other things with money. Obviously, hiring the executive workers. Ads allow you to advertise for the cruise, but they also allow you to get bonuses when you visit planets and potentially drop people off, or not drop people off, but show them what's there. So that's kind of the player board. Over the left-hand side, we have the shuttle. You're going to have a starting shuttle here. I've already taken my starting bonuses. And then you're going to add segments to these shuttles. So these are these here. You're going to add segments to these shuttles, and eventually you're going to possibly get maybe 3 segments on there. There is a special bonus that allows you to get 4 segments on there. Fill that with workers and send them off. And they go to the left-hand side of your board just there. And you're going to start building those throughout the game by getting blueprints. So, over on the main board itself, so let's talk from left to right. Over here, we have agenda cards. Now, agenda cards are these kind of double-use cards, and these are going to vary throughout the game. You can spend them for either this text that's on here. So here it says, I may build up to 4 segments following placement limits, and I don't lose any influence if I building them directly from the display. As I mentioned, these segments here, generally you would have to pay a cash and an influence. It's saying I don't have to do that, so I can build up to 4 segments. I could spend that card and build a shuttle with 4 segments, or I could cash it in and get that resource, basically, which you may need to do at some point for your for when you're launching your cruises. Now, as you take them off, they're not automatically refilled. There's a specific action that allows you to refill those, and when you do refill, what happens is any that are still that are blank, you get the bonus from there, and then you would refill the column. So that's that there. Over here, we have kind of the objectives column. So yeah, there are a number of these objectives tiles. This one here is the one that I've got here. And in a solo game, you're going to start off at the middle. So here, I need at least 1 executive worker. When I get that, I would move that up there, and I would take one of my cubes from this section here where you can see the wings and put it onto the AGM meeting where the AGM is going to take place. Okay, this particular action means that I would have to have 2 of each segment, because that's on the number 2 there in the middle. 1 second. I would need 2 of each segment in my rockets to complete that bonus. Again, I would then take one of these and put them into the relevant AGM, depending on what phase we're at. And here, I need 2 bonuses, so 2 upgrades on 2 different planets, basically. Once I've done that, I can move that up there and score that bonus. And that's how that works there. These are only moved onto the AGM tiles as and when you complete those objectives. These are the AGM tiles, and these are effectively the timer for the game. Once this is filled, you're going to the first one is full, you're going to conduct your first AGM, where you're going to score based on the number of wings that you've got available, and you always start with 1 available, and the number of cubes that you have in there. If you have the most cubes, you're considered as having 1 more cube, and if you're tied for cubes, like you can be on this one here, then you're both considered to have 1 more. Once that's done, what's going to happen is you're going to take these tiles, and you're going to then put some of the NPCs, development cogs, on the board. So this would go in the first technology, then we would go on network number 2, and then on network number 4 down here. If you can't put it, you move it on to the next one lengthways, clockwise, should I say. And that's how that works there. That happens after AGMs 1 and 2, okay? Now, on 8, and what you're going to do also for the NPC as well, after AGM 1, you're going to change one of its workers for an executive worker. It starts with 2 on the board, and you're going to change one for an executive worker. What does that do? When it gets bumped, i.e. moved to the next space, if it's a blank space, it will move on, so it's more chance of bumping you or Rachel. That's going to happen after the first and second AGM. The third AGM is your final, basically, and that's it. Once you've done that, once you've triggered that final AGM, you're going to do another round, and then you're going to do a shuttle round, I believe it is. So you're going to finish the round, then do a advanced shuttle round, and that's it. You're going to score and see who gets the most points at the end of the game. So that's there. Over at the top of the board up here, we have these technology tiles, and these are kind of game-changing tiles. So let's just choose a couple here, and I'll show you what they are. This first one says, let's see if it's focusing. There we go. It says, when advancing your cruise, you may spend 2 fuel to advance to 1 additional stop and gain the benefit of both stops, because generally when you advance a cruise, it only gives 1 stop. And this one says all launches require 1 lower food. And they are variant technology tiles, and they're going to be at the top of the board, and you can say you can get to access them. This is where you're going to be taking most of your actions in these buildings here. So you will take your worker from the board and you will place it there. And let's say I've got a development there and a development there. That means I've got access to 6 actions. Not only these 2 actions here, but these 2 and these 2. And you're going to take 2 actions on your turn. So let's go through the kind of actions top to bottom, and I'll talk about what the various actions are that you can take. So here's the main board, and what we'll do is we'll go round the main board and we'll talk about the kind of various actions that you can take from top left and all the way around. So the first one allows you to take resources from the resource track, which is here. You can take up to 3 resources in any order that you want. As you can see, they start on 2 as you start. So I can take 1 of each, basically move my slider up on my player board for each of those resources that I want. This here allows you to build a shuttle. So you would take a shuttle and an engine part, which is these here from the side of the board, okay? This means that you get -5 points if the shuttle isn't launched. This is your scoring criteria for the shuttle when you do score it. And down at the bottom, each of these engines has different bonuses on there. So this one, for example, you do this straight away, allowing to get an agenda card and a funding bonus. So put that next to my board, flip that over, and suddenly I have a shuttle that I can start building. So that's kind of how you get more shuttles out there. If we move over here, this allows you to hire an executive. Of course, you need to have the right money and resources to be able to do that. This allows you to take 2 agenda cards from the agenda card column. So you can increase the number of agenda cards that you've got. At the top there is to take 2 blueprints. So over on the right here, we have the blueprint stack. You're going to take 2 of those blueprints and you're going to put them next to your board. And those you can hold a maximum of 5. And why would you take blueprints? Well, if you look on them, they have different point scoring systems on there, which is there, okay? So that's how many points it's going to score when it comes to scoring them. They also tell you what type of passenger you want to put in there. Now, you don't have to put them in there, but if you put them in there, you get bonuses based on matching the passenger with the right crew. So you're going to need those segments, and some of them have some slightly separate abilities on them as well. So you're going to need those segments to kind of build up your rockets before you can send them into space. If we look here, this is about advertising for a cruise. So you need to advertise for the cruisers. So you're going to move the passengers into the right kind of row for which cruise you want to take, and that allows you to then seed the cruise before you take it. This allows you to build 2 segments. You can build segments from 2 places. First of all, next to your board, paying the relevant cost for it. Secondly, you can build them direct from the blueprint stack, but you also have to pay this cost on the right here, which is going to be a reputation point and also some extra money. You're going to need that to build up your cruisers. You're generally limited to 3 segments. You can build a 2-segment one or a 1-segment one if you want. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a certain agenda card that allows you to then build 4 segments as well. So if we look here, this allows you to refresh the agenda card column, which is fine. You refresh that, and as I mentioned, you get the bonuses on there. This here allows you to increase the number of supplies. So you'd do that, you'd lose an agenda card, and then you'd move one of these supplies all the way to the top. You get the relevant money, so 1 per space that you passed, and if you get to the top, or when you put it at the top, you also get a reputation point as well. And finally, we have the builder developments here. So this allows you to build developments. They have different costs at the bottom. This is 5, 6, or 7. That's a combination of money and or resources. So you can do money or resources or both. And this down here, you can pay 1 less coin to get 2 resources, or 1 less coin to get 2 ads, and that's it. So as I say, there's that whole interconnected thing there. There's also this executive action, which I mentioned earlier, and that's what the executive can take. There are certain things which will allow normal workers to work like executives. So that's kind of the main board. I'll just move over to kind of the board where the cruisers are now. So here is where the cruises happen. You can see these again are individual tiles as well. At the side of the board for the start of the game, I've already loaded it up with some passengers, and you would do that before the game starts. And eventually you're going to advertise for these cruisers, so you're going to start moving people across. If you match the right person into the cruise, and what's going to happen is you're going to get money, and you're also going to get a reputation point for matching them as well. So you're going to move those across there, but you don't have to match them. It may well be that in this particular queue, which is one ad to move people across from there, and that you've only got one ad that you have to move customers across there that don't quite match. So those go up there, and the different customers here, it's one ad for this one, 2 ads for this one, and 3 ads for that one. When you kind of do that and you restock the available cruisers, some of those are going to move down, and you're going to reseed that part of the board. For the solo game, we blocked off the top two kind of cruise spaces there, so you've only got 4 cruisers to choose from in the solo game there as well. So that's kind of that part of the board. So you've seen everything, how it works, everything that's kind of available right now. There is some money and there are some ads that you can use, but in reality that's kind of everything that you get on the gameplay. I say it looks fantastic on the table, and Ian O'Toole's artwork has done a spectacular job in kind of creating this vision of Galactic Cruise. So let's just talk about the solo AI setup. So the solo AI is going to have more or less the same setup as you. It's going to have its developments, it's going to have its 2 workers, she's going to have her 2 executives, a number of cubes to put on the board when you do certain things, and their shuttle at the side of the board along with all the tiles. The slight difference here on the solo AI is, first of all, they don't use money, ads or resources, and secondly, what's going to happen is you have these gold tokens here. Now the game comes with 3 varying difficulties, and I suppose you could use any portion of that you want. I've got this currently set up for a medium difficulty. That means that when Rachel builds her 6 developments, that's why it's gone in there, because they will build top to bottom, moving column to column. That will complete one of their objectives. They will move their cube from the wings onto an AGM card, onto an objective card, and that's what will happen here. Here, they need to launch 2 cruisers to complete that objective. So once they've done that, that's another objective completed for them. And here, it's when they build their 7th segment. Now, if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that means that is going to be there. So I know that when they build their 7th segment, that is going to kind of track that there. Other than that, the board is set up more or less exactly the same as your board. They just have these slightly different objective cards. So let's talk about the solo AI deck now. So the solo game comes with a deck of 12 cards, and there are a number of things on here that I'll talk through. First of all, we have the kind of placement. So what's going to happen is you're going to flip one of these cards, and on the card that's left on the top of the stack, it's going to tell you where they're going to place their worker, and they will place their worker in an appropriate place on the board. So they're going to place their worker there, and what that does is potentially bump workers. So for example, if my worker was already placed there, and that card came up, say, place their worker there, they would bump that worker. You can't bump your own workers unless you get something that specifically tells you can. If a worker is bumped, it goes back to your board, and you get to get a funding bonus from the side of your board, one of the ones that are available there. So that, first of all, on the card that's left at the top of the stack, tells you what where their worker is going to do. It doesn't necessarily tell you the action, because on the card you flipped over, there are 2 actions, okay? So if you can't do the top action, you will do the bottom action, basically. So if they can't do their advertising for a cruise, effectively what they're doing is loading the cruise up there, basically. Then what they will do is they would do the build 2 segments action instead, and they would take blueprints from the stack based on a numbering system and build those segments. And what are those numbering systems? Well, again, it's here. In an area where there are 6, so for example, there are 6 sections on the network here, you'd use this numbering system. So if it says, if it asks you to build, I don't know, or to place a development in number 6 there, you would count from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you place a development there. However, if there's less than 6, say there's 4 or 5, you would use this numbering system here. So on this one, it says, right, if they've got to build a blueprint action, say, and it says number 1, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you choose this one here, and then you would choose the one below it. So the numbering system works really, really effectively. And because you're shuffling these cards up, you can't guarantee that, because the action that you're taking there can be based off the numbering system on there. It means that it's never ever going to be exactly the same game in 2 ways. So that's how those cards work, and they work exceptionally easy. Now, the game comes with, I say, 3 difficulties for the solo. solo, what's going to happen is in the easy mode, when they recall their players, they don't take a turn. I've got this currently set up for medium because of where the objectives token are taken. So when they recall, just like you, they would get a funding bonus and they would also get to take an action from their board based on the card that you draw. And that's how it works. And then there's a harder mode as well, which increases the difficulty even more. So they will mimic more or less exactly your turns. There are slight differences in what they do and how they do things, but in reality, I would say it's about 80% the same as what you do is what Rachel does as the solo AI. They will never score these objectives; got their own objectives to put onto the progress tiles to trigger the AGMs. As I got those, but they will also put cubes on there as well when they launch a shuttle. You also put cubes into the AGM when you launch a shuttle. So let's talk about shuttle launches now. What happens when you launch a shuttle? Okay, I've seeded the board a little bit as if I'm going to launch a shuttle, and I've given myself 2 extra executive workers so I can do it all in one fell swoop. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place one of my executive workers just here, and I'm going to take the action at the top, which is to advertise for a cruise. So if I look over here, I've got a particular cruise, which is this one here, which says for this cruise I would need to fulfill it and get the bonuses for it, should I say, I need a purple and an orange worker. Well, surprisingly, at the side of the board, there's 3 workers. There's a purple, an orange and a green. So I'm going to advertise for the cube. Fortunately for me, they're both in the column which costs, or the row which costs 1 ad. So I'm going to pay 2 ads, and I move a purple one across there and an orange one across there. Now, because I fulfilled both those and they match what's on that cruise, I'm going to get 2 coins, so 2 money. There we go. We'll put that next to my board. And I'm also going to get 2 influence points because there's 2 different workers there that don't match, but they match the requirements on there. So we'll 1, 2 up there. So I've got 2 influence points. That's good. I've advertised for that cruise now. The next thing you need to do is you need to schedule a cruise. Well, fortunately, you get to take 2 actions, and both of these are next to each other. So I'm now going to schedule this cruise. So to schedule a cruise, you can see my scheduler is at the top of the board just there. I'm going to put them there, and that cruise is scheduled. And what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to choose a funding bonus from the side of my board, and I'm going to flip it over because that's going to go on the journey with me. So let's say I do that, which gives me an ad. So you get that and you flip it over and put it back on the board for now. So that gives me an ad back, and that's done there. And that is that cruise scheduled. But I need to launch the cruise now, okay? So to launch a cruise, generally you wouldn't be able to fill the queue up, and you could do, yeah, if you've got the right number of workers, yeah. To launch a cruise, you're going to have to do another action. You're going to take one of your available workers, and you're going to put them on the bottom of this counter, or this countdown down here. Let me go down to the board and show you. So you can see the countdown. It tells you exactly what you need to do here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my scheduler off that scheduled cruise, and that goes back to the top there. Of course, you can only schedule 1 cruise at a time. Then I'm going to load the relevant workers into the shuttle. So here we go. I know there are 2 spaces on this shuttle. You can see here I've got 3 segments. That's created 2 spaces on this shuttle, and I know I've got a purple and an orange worker. That hasn't quite worked for me. It should be green up there, but we'll do purple and orange on that one. There we go. Okay, so imagine that top one's purple. In fact, let's just switch those around. That will work better, I think. Yeah, there we go. I'm allowed 2 workers there. I can put an orange one in the top and a purple one in the bottom. So that's done there. You've loaded the workers on. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your cubes and you're going to put it onto the relevant AGM. These cubes are from the bottom of your board, and you're going to put that on there. Okay, so that's that one done. Then we're going to pay the relevant amount of food, oxygen and fuel for it. So I should have put that at the top there. There we go, because we know I need 4 fuel for it. First of all, it says I pay 1 food for every person on there. There's 2 on there. I've got 2 food. There we go. That's that done. Then I pay 1 oxygen for each segment. There's 3 segments on there. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. It's like it was planned for. And here I pay the amount of fuel that's on the top of the relevant cruise. There's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's that done. Then what happens is I flip over this and I score. There we go. I flip over the shuttle from that side, which means I know it doesn't get me -5 at the end of the game, and I get to score whatever's on here. And this says I score 1 for every segment. There's 3 segments on there, so I'm going to score 3 points. 1, 2, 3 at the top of the board. I know you can't see that, and you flip that over and put that there. Then I'm going to take the token that I flipped over. So as I mentioned, when I schedule the cruise, that token goes on the bottom of the shuttle there, and that's ready. And then what happens is the pilot goes into the shuttle space, and that cruise is launched now, basically. So that's how that works. It works more or less exactly the same for Rachel as your AI, except she doesn't use ads. She just takes the relevant passengers, puts them onto the cruise, and then launches her cruise basically up into space. Okay, you can, if you don't have if you haven't loaded the right cruise, the right passengers on the cruise to fulfil the criteria that's in the segments there, you can sell a ticket to somebody on the day. But if that leaves people in your queue, you're going to get some stuff taken away from you for that. So that's how you launch a cruise, and this is where some big point scoring happens. Because when you launched a cruise, what happens is that the first action in your turn is going to be to advance shuttles. And if we look at the top of this particular cruise here, there are a number of destinations. We have a purple planet, a day in space, an orange planet, a day in space, and then it returns. So we know that is up for 4. So what happens there is, first of all, when you advance a shuttle, you move your pilot onto the first one. That is a purple planet. Now, what you can do is at the bottom here, you have your progress token, your upgrade token, should I say, that you took from your launch tower. You can place that on that planet if you want. I could place this on any one of those there because this is a purple planet. Or I could hold it back and wait until I visit the orange planet to get those bonuses there. And this becomes a really key and interesting part of the game here. You know, as you can see, this bonus allows you to get, I don't know if you can see that there. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. There we go. This bonus on the orange planet allows you to build 4 shuttles and 4 segments in each shuttle. I'm not too sure on that. I'll have to look in the book for that. And that allows you a funding bonus of adding a cube onto the AGM, or when you get a cube on the AGM, you also get a funding bonus. Look over at the purple here. When you launch, you can launch with an additional person, and you don't have to pay, or you learn person of any colour, and you don't have to pay influence, so you can sell a ticket on the day. When you get an influence, you also get another influence, and that means that your normal workers can take actions like executive workers. So there are bonuses on all of those. You don't have to choose on the planet that you want. So say I did and I chose that, that meant that I can then do build 4 shuttles with 4 segments. Then you score your guests. So depending on what planet you're on, you get to score a relevant guest that you've got. Now I'm on the orange planet. No, I'm on the purple planet. Should I say? Let's say I was on the orange planet now. I'm on the orange planet now, and I get to score a guest. I've got 1 ad, and I spend 1 ad because it's an orange guest on an orange planet, and I get to score 3 points plus 1 point for that, plus a point for any of the bonuses that are there. So that would be 5 points I would get for that, and I would spend that. If it's not a guest that you want to score that's the same colour as the planet, you have to pay 2 ads for that. And you would do that each phase that you go. So that would be your first day in space, and then you would move on at the beginning of your next turn to do your second. So at the beginning of my next turn, I move here. It's a day in space. What that means is I would get to gain bonuses based on their guests and the matching segment type. So here I've got a purple guest in a purple segment and an orange guest in an orange segment. I can score bonuses based on what's on the top right of the board. Let me take you. Here we go. So again, these are different tiles you can put here. So I've got an orange guest and a purple guest. I would get 1 money, and I would get 1 ad there for those guests on this particular date. Rachel, the AI, works slightly different. For example, on a day in space, she would gain 1 reputation for each guest on the cruise. So she would gain 2 reputation points, 1, 2. If it's at a destination, if it's the first destination of the cruise, she would drop off her launch token. Let's just flip that over and say she's done, I don't know, that one there. She would drop off her launch token if it's the first destination on the cruise, on the leftmost empty space in the destination. Then, regardless if it is the first destination or not, she scores all of her guests at the destination. She doesn't need to spend ads to do that. So you can see that she's got this catch-up mechanism, excuse me, as far as her points are concerned there. So that's how Rachel scores on her cruisers. And when she starts launching those cruisers, her points can start to rack up quite significantly. Certainly she's got three rockets, and she's got 3 segment rockets and 2 segment rockets, and they're out at the same time, then it can get quite a big kind of, she can build up quite a bit of score. But don't worry, you've got ways to mitigate against that in terms of your own scoring there as well. So that's kind of how that works. Then what happens is the cruise would finish and they'd come back down to Earth. You would restock the tile by drawing a new queue. Oh, you do that before actually. When you take the cruise, you draw a new tile and then you fill up the queue, move workers down into the queue, and then you fill it up with the number of workers that are on the tile. And that's it. And she would gain, obviously, the benefits for bringing back her cruise, and she would also, if depending on where that scoring criteria is, she would potentially complete a company objective as well. And that's it. And you're going to do that until there are 3 AGM. Okay, so that's kind of an overview on how Galactic Cruise plays and just how easy this solo AI Rachel is to implement in the game. Look, this Galactic Cruise is a game for people that like action selection games. You know, it's always going to be compared to a Lacerda type game, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, if Lacerda was to create this, I'm sure he would be very happy with what the end result is. It feels like a really well-developed action selection game. And you can tell that from the engagement that Kinson Key have had with the community over the last kind of 2.5, 3 years, whatever this has been going. I remember seeing this in the very early stages. I've been speaking to the guys for a couple of years now. I met them over at Gen Con and saw it live as well. And now I've had the game and I've played it a number of times. It's everything I want it to be. It's a really polished package for a relatively small designer to get something like Ian O'Toole on board and to create a game which would give Vita Lacerda a run for his money is absolutely fantastic. It feels like they've covered all bases here in terms of the interconnectedness of gameplays, and that's a key thing for action selection games. You have to feel like what you're doing is allowing you to do something else, maybe not in the next term, but certainly in the future. That longer term strategy is really, really important, and they've hit the nail on the head with that here. They created something that feels thematic, that feels like every action that you're doing has a reason to exist in the world that it exists in, and you understand why it's there. You know, you want to take resources, you want to fill those resources up, or you want to hire an executive worker to get access to these executive actions, or you want to build more developments because your developments allow you access to more actions, but also give you more points and more supplies. Everything is connected in such a silky and smooth way that you understand the reason why things are happening. So it's in terms of weight, and it's a question I've been asked a few times since I've been talking about the game online, etc. Where does it fit in the weight category? And all I can compare it to is kind of Lacerda-like games, if you like. So it's probably slightly weightier than a game like the Gallerist, but less weighted than a game like Kanban EV potentially. And that's perfect for it. You know, I don't really understand or go by the Board Game Geek weighting scale, but it's certainly a mid to heavyweight Euro game. But it's ideal for those dipping their toes into kind of action selection because there aren't massive amounts of mechanisms. It makes it easy to understand what's happening. Still gives you that wonderful kind of dichotomy of if I do this now, I can't do this then because I've only got 2 workers on my board and therefore I want to do this. And if I don't do that, they may well take that, or the AI may well take that. Excuse me. And I don't want them because I really want that piece or that move or that action, or they're going to trigger an AGM and I don't want that AGM to happen. And there's loads of ways for the game to kind of come along and say, yeah, you've been planning fantastically so far. I'm going to come in and throw a spanner in your works and you won't be able to do what you want. And that is really good that it's mitigable. Of course it is, because with enough planning you can absolutely do that. But I say it feels wonderfully connected. It feels like you're doing everything for a reason, and that's exactly what you want from an action selection game. Excuse me. Euros are hard to clarify in terms of theme, but this does hit the nail on the head. You have the kind of the buildings here, you have the marketing board, you have the blueprints, you have the shuttle bays, you have the customers. Everything feels like, as I say, it exists in this world for a reason. I think that's really important. So it's as thematic as an action selection game can be. Looks wise, I think it looks fantastic on the board. You know, it's not it's not bright and garish or anything like that. It's got some muted tones in there, but everything is delineated on the board in terms of colour and on your player board in terms of what happens and where it goes. And I think it looks great. And the artwork by Ian O'Toole, not only on the box, on the board, and also on the manuals as well, is absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about the solo AI then. So let's talk about Rachel. It is just a deck of 12 cards. And, my concern when I first saw it is there were no real decision trees. I've got these solo rules here. These aren't the final version. These are just printed versions here. But there are no decision trees really in that. In reality, does she have a shuttle in space? Then no. Then she does X, Y, and Z. Does she have any workers on the board? Yes. Does she have all the workers on the board? Yes, then you recall them. Does she have workers available? No, then you carry out an action. And those are really the only decision trees. And the key thing, I think, for them was achieving the balance in laying out these actions on these cards. To say there's a top and a bottom action, that if you can't do one, you must always be able to do the next action. And balancing that to make sure every action has its fair turn. And they managed to achieve that. In my first game that I played, I think the first card I drew out was a shuttle launch. Couldn't do that because there was no shuttle, and she hadn't really loaded any shuttles as well or advertised for any cruisers. And the last card was advertising for cruisers. So there were no shuttles launched in that first in the first AGM. And the first AGM, come to the second and third phases of the game, she was launching shuttles left, right, and crazy and scoring points all over the board. And after speaking to Edward Taylor King, one of the designers, the deck has been designed so that if there seems to be something lacking in what they're doing at the beginning of the game, they will make up for it throughout the rest of the game. So that balance is absolutely there, and I think that's really, really important for a solo AI. Is you can't ever feel like you either won by cheating or lost by cheating. There has to be an element of balance that you're battling against. There are difficulty modifiers, and that's based on easy, medium, and hard, and that's based on where you put these tokens and how quickly they achieve their objectives. I'm sure there are other ways that you can tailor the difficulty as well to make it more. But what you've got is a kind of mid to heavyweight game that you've got a lot of decision space, and they've managed to trim the solo AI down into a deck of 12 cards, which carries out, I would say, 80-85% of the actions in the same way that you do. And that is what most people want from an AI. There are certain games out there where the AI, it may be a good AI, and it works very well, but it does its own thing. And I think of Expeditions recently from Stonemaier Games. The AI just did its own game. It worked very well for Expeditions, but it wasn't playing my game. It was off doing its own thing, hoovering things up. This is mimicking you as far as an AI can mimic a player, and that's really good. You don't need any additional components other than what you get in the box on this deck of 12 AI cards. The usage of the numbering system on the back gets rid of any ambiguity. And the only questions I've had are about the individual actions, not to Edward Taylor King and the guys over at Kinson Key that I've had to reference the book for, just making sure I understand how her actions work. There's absolutely zero ambiguity in the game in terms of what the cards do and what the AI should be doing. It's just knowing what those moves are. Look, I really, really have enjoyed my time with Galactic Cruise. I think that if you like a kind of mid to heavyweight Euro game, action selection type game, with lots of variability to it, or there's loads of different tiles that you put down in different configurations, and how the blueprint tiles come out, the shuttle tiles, how these action tiles are placed on the board, the objectives, etc. Loads of variability in there to ensure that your game is never going to play the same way twice, and they've nailed that absolutely 100%. This gives me everything I want from an action selection game. The artwork is sublime. The gameplay is really interesting. It feels connected. It's dynamic. It's smooth. It's relatively easy to pick up and learn how to play the game. And you can play a game in round about, I would say, 75 to 90 minutes and outward, depending on how much decision space you give yourself. But 75 to 90 minutes for a solo game. I would say 90 minutes with setup and teardown after you've set it up and tore it down a few times. Obviously, your first setup is going to take a while. But I would say 90 minutes for a game like this is absolutely fantastic. You're probably going to play somewhere around about 20 turns in a game, but those turns can be quick because, as you know, in an action selection game, you're playing a turn, but you also know potentially what your next 2 turns may well be, 2 or 3 turns may well be. So you're actually placing those if you can, and doing that is really good. The bumping mechanism, where workers are placed on the board, works really well because it can extend the amount of turns you can take without recalling players back to your board. But it also creates this kind of dynamic board state at the same time. And there isn't a wasted action when you recall players to your board. You get the funding bonuses, but you also get to take an action from one of the spaces adjacent to where you've got a development on there as well. So there are no real wasted actions in the game as well, which there can be in some Euro games. This is a galactic hit for me. I've really enjoyed my time with Galactic Cruise. I'm packing it up today and sending it off to the next previewer for it with gritted teeth, because I want to keep the game and keep playing the game. I think it's a really, really good game. If the idea of a fresh feeling, yet familiar-ish in terms of some of the mechanisms, game from an up-and-coming designer, which is going to give you loads of variability, a minimal overhead but challenging solo AI is on your radar, then please check out the Kickstarter. The link is in the description below. I hope this does very, very well, because I've really, really enjoyed my time with it. Love to play it with other people as well. I think it's not going to be that difficult game to explain to gamers how they should play it. And once you've got it, those systems and those mechanisms work so, so well. And I think people will pick it up. And I think, as playing it as a multiplayer game would be a really, really excellent experience as well. But from a solo perspective, I'm really pleased what they've done here. 12 solo cards which manage a challenging and dynamic solo AI with very difficulty modifiers. It's like a solo player's Euro dream to get that. So yeah, there we go. That's my preview of Galactic Cruise, the board game from Kinson Key Kinson Key Games, designed by Edward Taylor King, Colton Thompson, Dennis Northcott, with the art by Ian O'Toole. If it looks of interest to you, do check out the Kickstarter. Bear in mind, Euro games, action selection games aren't going to be for everybody, but for me, they shot for the moon and they've hit the stars with this. I think it's fantastic. Thank you very much for watching this preview of Galactic Cruise. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And one final thought. If you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.